Chapter 1. Oxygen. Yes, the oxygen level was rising. Lucilla noted the sensor reading on her tablet. The little angels were working their miracle and transforming the atmosphere of Mars. She stared at the rocky terrain outside the transparent dome. She had never imagined the angel-covered surface would be so colorful. The green and yellow slime crept among the rocks, and the small pools of water reflected the deepening blue of the sky. It was funny how popular names emerged from acronyms. The inventors had used the name of genetically engineered early life forms for the cyanobacteria designed to survive on the surface of Mars and release oxygen via the process of photosynthesis. Subsequently, the public relations advisors had deleted the word genetically because of the unpopular connotations. Their suggested acronym of Engels was corrupted quickly to Angels, which was a fitting name for the initial agents of the vast project intended to save humanity. If the long-term strategy succeeded, Mars would be terraformed into a farm to grow food for the billions of people on overpopulated Earth. The angel bacteria seeded with the nitrogen-enriched fertilizer to produce oxygen were the first stage in the transformation. The final stages would not come during her lifetime. The daily news reports flashed on the screen. Lucilla shuddered at the images of the rioting mobs. She could never return to the cities of Earth. She had deliberately chosen this life of isolation as a scientist, analyzing the transformation of Mars. 3 years of evaluations and training for her solitary job, followed by the hardships of a year in a spaceship, had proved worthwhile when she was assigned to Mars Station 3. For a scarred introvert like her, 4 years living alone in the dome were bliss. The nearest people were the 2 scientists in their separate domes on distinct regions of Mars, and the watcher stationed on the moon Phobos. The 4 people on Mars enjoyed their privacy, and even communicated using virtual avatars instead of displaying their real faces. She assumed the others had their reasons, just as she had, for using the avatars. Even now, after a decade, she remembered her bleak desolation when Steve had refused to visit after her accident. She recalled the disgust in his eyes when she tried to speak with him. No, it was better to live here on Mars. Who would want to see her ruined face with the scars and the fake eyeballs? At least her prosthetic eyes gave her the ability to see a wider than normal range of the electromagnetic spectrum. Her enhanced vision was invaluable for chemical analysis, and was one of the reasons she had been chosen as a scientific observer on Mars. Lucilla ran through the morning routine, checking her compression suit, the emergency air, and the climate controls for her dome habitat. The temperature-controlled suit was comfortable and hooked easily to the air cylinder and helmet when she ventured outside the dome. She examined the filters and conduits for the air regeneration system and the water recycler. There were no leaks as confirmed by the low variation in the daily readings. "Dev," she called to her robotic assistant. "Bring me a cup of coffee." The official name for her robot was Devon, which was intended to sound like a male human. Lucilla's cynical mind imagined that the name Dev was short for devious, since it was often a challenge to explain simple actions to the robot despite its enormous brain. She had to provide detailed instructions to Dev on how to make coffee, from the individual freeze-dried packets of coffee and milk. Still, Dev was extremely strong and had encyclopedic data stored in its electronic brain. The robot approximated a human in overall shape, but Lucilla had rejected the fully human features available in other models. She preferred the robot to be her assistant and not a humanoid companion for conversation or intimate interactions. The comm beeped. It was time for her short conversation with Mac, the scientist manning Mars 1 near the North Pole. Mac's avatar lit. As usual, the smiley face icon irritated her. She wished he would choose a more original image. His personality showed the same lack of novelty, and he spoke with the same stolid, monotonous voice every time. Mars 1 to Mars 3. Mac here. What's new, Lucilla? Over. He always asked the same question in identical words. She took 2 steps to sit at the desk, swiveled the chair to stare outside the dome, and called back, Mars 3 to Mars 1. Hi Mac, this is Lucilla. No problems here. All readings are normal. Angels are busy. What about your station? Roger, Lucilla. No problems at Station 1. Ice cap has started the summer melt. Ending transmission from Mars 1. Over and out. Mac was a real loner and never talked for more than 5 minutes. He studied the seasonal variations in the ice cap and the geological formations near the pole. Lucilla sighed. Mac was gone until tomorrow, although communication with him was scarcely better than talking with her robot. She knew her distant companions only by their different avatars and voices. Mac and Rosalie were the scientists on Mars 1 and Mars 2, while Jasper watched from the spaceship tethered on the tiny moon of Phobos. She prepared her midday meal of vegetable stew with a mug of soy milk, and ate in silence while gazing across the freshly verdant landscape outside the dome. Every week the angel slime spread further and the pools of water deepened. Above, misty clouds puffed into the sky as hopeful harbingers of rain. Probably the first rain showers on the planet for millions of years. It was time for her walk. Lucilla sealed the helmet around her neck and buckled on the air supply. Her compression suit was sufficient protection for the light atmosphere of Mars. She shouldered the sample collector. As a further precaution, she said, Dev, I'm going outside. Lucilla entered the airlock and waited for the breathable air to be sucked out of the chamber. The outer atmosphere cycled into the airlock, and she stepped onto the stony surface. Her boots were studded for purchase on the slippery angel-coated rocks, and she held a pronged staff for extra support. The atmosphere of Mars was denser since the angels had begun pumping out oxygen. The 3% oxygen level achieved after 10 years was a tremendous improvement over the original level of less than 1%. At present, there was still insufficient oxygen in the atmosphere to breathe comfortably. Though at the speed the angels worked, another decade or 2 might suffice. Once outside the dome, Lucilla paused to admire the fresh cloud formations and bluing sky. Her buggy was protected under the bubble extension of the residential dome, and the rows of green plants were visible inside the large greenhouse. She walked cautiously away from her dome. Each time she came out, the angels had crept further across the stony terrain. Their colors had brightened from the initial dull brown to grass green, lemon yellow, and orange like the surface soil. She took samples of the angels as she walked. Each sample of the cells went into a separate sealed tube with a label indicating the time and distance from the injection site. She paced to the end of her safety line and looked ahead at the streak of green angels extending toward the mountain range on the horizon. The little miracle workers had reproduced faster than anyone had anticipated. The angels eagerly chewed up the dusty soil and excreted the precious oxygen gas into the thickening atmosphere. Back in the airlock, she activated the opaque setting on her goggles to protect her eyes and ran the decontamination cycle. She endured the sterilizing wash of chlorine and the short wavelength radiation and made sure the sample tubes received the full treatment. Strict precautions were essential when dealing with the mutated cells in this remote and hostile environment. Lucilla stacked the tubes into the rack and instructed Dev to run the sequencer, perform the full chemical analysis, and compare the new readings with the results for earlier samples. The robot was useful for these routine, repetitive tasks. She could rely on Dev to notify her of any abnormal deviations in the DNA or chemical components of the angels.